Hello, everybody. Welcome to our open book. Very good to be with you tonight. Lori Tierney, Joan Denny, John O'Hara, Diane Wood, Tom Hergert, Dorothy Joy, Louis Gobron, Fran in New York City, Jeremy Sicking. Nice to see so many names coming in to join us. We have and Lori Dominic, Maggie. We have a very distinguished guest tonight. Well, they're all distinguished, but this one in particular. Our friend Deborah Tannen, who is a professor of linguistics at Georgetown for more than 40 years uh, and writes bestsellers all the time, wrote a bestseller that it's utterly personal. Finding My Father, his century-long journey from World War I Warsaw and my quest to follow. And she joins us now. And firstly, Deborah, thanks very much for being with us.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
You and possibly your father always knew you would write this book. Your father, Eli. How so?
I thought it was my idea that I'd had forever, as long as I could remember. But when I started working on it and finding his notes that he had written, he had very, very vivid memories of his childhood in Warsaw and loved to talk about it, and I loved to hear about it. I found something from 1979 saying maybe someday somebody will do something with these memories, as I've suggested to Deborah. So probably he planted the idea. But it was because part of it, of course, because I adored him, but he loved to talk about his history, his past. And he lived through World War One in Warsaw. He was born into a Hasidic community and had such detailed memories. Came to this country when he was 12, but kind of an immigrant story. But I thought it was revealing of a particular immigrant story. He gave up religion and was a communist, got his FBI file, gave that up, um, worked in a factory when he was 14 and yet still managed to become a lawyer. Yet it was a depression story. He wasn't able to actually support his family as a lawyer until he was 50. So there were things about his life that I thought were interesting. And it was a way for me to get back and spend some more time with him.
Oh. As you indicated, he didn't become a lawyer until later in life, and he held many jobs. Could I get you to talk about his time as a corrections officer at the federal pen in Danbury, Connecticut?
Yeah, this was the happiest time of my parents' life. Rather odd. It was the Depression, and he had taken civil service exams and came out very high on this exam, so they offered him a position as a prison guard. It was the federal penitentiary in Danbury, Connecticut. So he went out there on his own first to see if it was going to work, and for the first time in his life, had his own room. When he came to this country, he lived with his mother and sister. They got the bedroom. He was in a cot in the hall or something. Um, and it was country. They had a house. So, yeah, he was very happy there. My parents, at that point, they had my oldest sister, Naomi, my middle sister, Mimi, was young. And they all talked about the willow tree in the backyard. It was so much more beautiful than living in New York City with streetcars and traveling on the subway. So it was a pretty hard time for the people in prison, but it was a happy time for him. And he was doing so well, they quickly promoted him to parole officer. However, it was the Depression. Everything was about earning money for the family. Another civil service test that he had done well on came through, and they offered him a job as an alcohol tax inspector, chasing bootleggers. And it was more money, and so he took it. And when he told the warden of the prison that he had done that, the warden was really upset. He said, "Don't do that. You're going to be a warden." And he did not believe that Oju would be promoted to warden. He believed that the warden wanted him to take the job, but didn't believe it. And the warden said, "No, no, no. It's just that there were no Jews in the system." But he didn't believe it. And I think also probably didn't realize he could change his mind, I think. Anyway, went ahead to Providence, Rhode Island, became a taxi, alcohol chasing bootleggers, had some pretty dramatic stories. He was carrying a gun and had stories about that. Um, but he later discovered that the person who had been given his job, that parole officer, did become a warden within a year because that warden had been promoted to a federal job. He probably knew it was coming, and he was Jewish. The reason it's so important in my family's life is that he regretted that for his entire life because Providence didn't work out. My mother became pregnant, didn't want to have a baby in Providence where they didn't know anybody. That baby was me. And they went back to New York. And in order to, again, he wanted a position as a lawyer. One opportunity seemed to come up that if he became active in the Liberal Party, that's a little bit left of the Democratic Party in New York City, he was promised that he would be a judge. And so he was working in a factory as a cutter. Now, he was very upset when he saw me referring to a cutter as it was a factory job. He said, it was a high paying job. He was making $9,000 when it meant something. It was a skilled job. But it ended up, wait till next year, another year, 13 years. And then he got his political appointment with the Workmen's Compensation Board. And if he had been appointed by Lindsay because he had switched to the Democratic Party because it had to do with the lawyers and who was going to get too complicated. Anyway, a Republican was elected.
John V. Lindsay was a Republican and the Liberal nominee.
Yeah. The Democrats and the Republicans were together. There's a whole story about that I'm mixing up, and it's not relevant really. But a Republican was elected governor. He lost the position. At that point, it was going to be either go back to the factory or finally set up his law practice, which he did.
May
I make it sound simple. It was complicated, but he managed.
Of course. No. You discovered your father had a love before your mother.
Yeah, I guess, so many people have the person they might have married. But this one was kind of a drama because my parents talked about it. They both talked about it. I call her Helen in the book. My mother referred to her as my rival. And my father told me about various stories from their past. And if this had happened, then maybe he would have married her. Well, he said he had saved her letters, but he didn't know where they were. And of course, that was very appealing to me. Maybe I could find those letters. He saved every piece of paper that came into his life, every letter he received, copies of many letters that he sent. So, but one time I was visiting them at their condo, and he was going to go down to the storage room for something, and I asked to go. And when we got there, I said, well, let's look for those letters. And he said, okay. He was very organized and he had labeled things. It was mine. It would take a year to navigate, but we looked at everything. Seemed not to find them. And there was one carton left on the highest shelf on the back. And I pulled it out and I heard a plop. He had lodged the letters in a manila folder behind the carton, between the wall and the last carton on the highest shelf in the corner. So I got the letters. And he said, take them. I read them, talked to him about it. They were love letters, and he really did love that woman, and she clearly loved him. I should say, I think he loved her. He didn't say that. He was very loyal to my mother, so he would never say that he had wished he had married the other woman. That was just my take on it. But do you want to know how he happened to marry my mother instead?
Sure, please.
Of
course. Yeah, tell us.
Get to it. It's all about sex. But, and the times and what sex was like at the time. Okay, he could not marry. He could not marry. He was responsible. He had no father. He never had a father. Father died before, before he was able, he never met him, didn't know him. So at 14, he quit school. He is sole support of his mother and sister. There is no way he can support a wife and family. However, if a man slept with a woman, he would have to marry her. My mother apparently told him that he didn't have to worry. She wasn't a virgin, and so he wouldn't be obligated. And so they went ahead, and then she changed her mind and decided that because they had slept together, they had to get married. She really wanted to marry him. And again, she was not secret about this. She said, "It took me a long time to get him. I chased him for a long time." So they were quite open about that. Um, and so she took to her bed and stopped eating, and he felt so guilty. And so he decided to go ahead and marry her. He often said that the other woman he could have slept with, but he wouldn't because he didn't want to. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't, ruin a woman's life by deflowering her. And shortly before, or right around the time this happened with my mother, she wrote him a letter, in which he didn't save. I don't have it, but he told me about it, that she actually wasn't a virgin after all. So it was different ways that women had to negotiate their virginity. Marriage was the goal, and I think they just played it differently. Um, I'm sure this other woman felt that had he known she wasn't a virgin, he would have respected her less. So there you have it.
That's pretty breathtaking.
Yeah. I'll
And
tell you something though. When I first thought about writing this, I thought, oh, this is terrible. My mother tricked him. What a terrible thing to do. I think she did him a huge favor. She gave him a life.
yeah,
If he would have stayed with his mother and sister, who was mentally ill, and mother was terribly depressed, and in contrast to the life in Poland, where he was part of a whole community, still, I think my mother did him a great favor, and us.
yeah. Um, did you ever find I don't want to call her the other woman, but
He was eager to know that she had married. He felt guilty, and he felt if he could find out that she had married, then she'd be okay. Whether or not her marriage was happy, that didn't enter into his thinking. So I did try to find her while he was alive and didn't succeed. But after he was gone and after the book came out, I was able to find her son, who told me that she had married and it was a happy marriage, and that made me glad.
oh, God bless them all.
Yeah.
God bless them all. Deborah, what do you think you take from your father into your life and work now?
I'm sorry. What do I take from my father's life?
Your father into your life and your work now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like my father was the word person, so my love of writing came from him. My love of language came from him. I think my sensitive perceptions about who said what and what they meant when they said that all that all came from him. But I really came to understand how much he was shaped by the immigrant experience, which I had not really thought about that much. He had no accent. He came when he was 12, so uh, he didn't strike people immediately as an immigrant. But I think that sense of separation from a community when he was that Hasidic community was so comforting. He said you couldn't walk out of your house without running into a relative,
Hmm.
and he actually lived in his mother's house, which she was one of 18 siblings. 9 of them were living in the house while he was there, and so he was part of something. So that also is something that has really, I think, I learned from writing the book and thinking about him, how much someone loses, how much an immigrant loses, losing their community, their home, and a place where they feel part of things. I actually found a letter that he wrote to someone, copy of a letter, obviously. 1934, he's 29, he's a lawyer, he's married, and he wrote, I still feel myself part of that life and not the one here.
Yeah. Um, how do you think about him now?
I still adore him. I think he was quite an amazing person to have accomplished what he did. Um, that he was so determined to support his family no matter what it took, even though it meant working in the factory all those years. And I think I got something else from him too, which I'm not so grateful for. I tend to regret things too. I'm I'm always thinking maybe I should have done something else. And I often wonder, is that because of that sense of regret that was a shadow over our household, that he had made this wrong decision? Um, and or maybe it's just temperament.
Well, maybe it wasn't the wrong decision, as you suggest.
Um, but no, I think actually his decision. I think he was better off not being a lawyer than being a
Oh,
prison,
yeah,
the warden. But he felt that his decision not to stay in the prison system and be a warden, uh, not because it was so terrible being a tax inspector, but because it meant 13 years in the factory.
yeah,
And becoming a lawyer, I mean, he had really, I didn't know what that meant. I knew he went to law school at night. I didn't know what that meant. But again, reading his diaries, he actually had journals he gave me from when he was 19, 20. That meant waking up at 7 o'clock, working 10 hours in the factory. This is not as, this is before, when he was a teenager.
yeah.
He had a half hour for lunch. He would go right to law school. He'd get home at 10. He would eat something, study, maybe have 5 hours sleep and do the whole thing again, 6 days a week, not five. So I think that's why having invested that much, he was sure he was going to be a lawyer when he was done. And he
You
was, but it took a while.
you owe him a lot. I guess we all do, don't we?
I feel like I owed my father so much because he talked to me so much. So many people have told me who read the book, they say that they were very moved by it. And then they say, I wish my father had talked so much. He wanted to talk about his past, and his memories were so detailed. You want to ask about his aunt who was a lover of Einstein?
Literally.
Yeah, you don't mean just a lover of Einstein. You mean lover of
I mean, they
Einstein.
were lovers. His family was very educated. So his mother was the founder and principal of the school, and one of her sisters had studied in Geneva, had studied physics in Geneva with Einstein, and had been his lover, which apparently was not that unusual. I discovered from people who had written about Einstein. Um, but when she came to this country first. He came and was at Princeton, and when his wife died, she thought, maybe they'd get back together. She went to Princeton, and apparently they did. I have lots of external evidence that this was true. They started their affair again, and another sister was a.
E equals MC squared.
It's all relative.
And apparently she got pregnant and was writing to her sister, the dentist, about getting an abortion, which I guess she did. And he didn't marry her, and she went off to California, like so many people do when things don't work out on the East Coast.
That's who's there. Well, Deborah, a remarkable story. Thank you for being with us tonight, Finding My Father by the great linguist Deborah Tannen. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm so glad that you could join us. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me a chance to revisit my father.
Well, thank you for giving us a chance to get to know your father a little bit. Thank you, everybody. I believe we will have a reading tomorrow night. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have our promo. for the Saturday show. So thanks. We're going to, well, anyway, we have lots of good people coming up on Saturday. So thanks very much for being with us tonight on our open book. Have a good night. Take care. Bye bye.